sang this song to me. There was a message in its melody, sweetest lyrics that I ever heard. There's a message in the songs of birds. Tomorrow is another day. Living is the only way. Tomorrow's gonna ever come. Listen to the words of the song. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be.
Good evening. I want to thank you all for joining us today. I'm Stephanie Wilson-Coleman, and this is the A Sip of Inspiration podcast. For those of you who are viewing us live, you're viewing us on Facebook and on YouTube. Unfortunately, it looks like you're going to be live only on my business page, but I'll be sure that it's shared to my personal page because I know a lot of you enjoy trolling my personal page too. So, as you know, it will always be posted afterwards on all of the places where you hear podcasts. So, joining me for tonight's show is Kerry Tuschhoff. She is the founder of the Birth of Hypnobabies, and it is a very interesting concept and procedure, and I couldn't wait to share it with you. I'm going to read a little bit about her. She's a founder and director of Hypnobabies Hypnobirthing. She has loved being a childbirth educator, a doula, and a hypnotherapist for over 30 years, teaching families to trust their minds, their bodies, their babies, and the process of childbirth is her passion, and receiving the resulting birth stories is her joy. I imagine that would be just the best thing that you could receive in the day about how easy that process is. And I just, oh God, it's like I'm envious of you for that. So welcome to my show, Sip of Inspiration. And I want you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, how they can locate you, and then we'll get into the discussion.
All right. Well, I'm Kerry Tuschhoff, and I am the founder and director of Hypnobabies. And we not only teach hypnobirthing, which is hypnosis for childbirth, but we have other programs as well that use hypnosis, like a fertility program, using hypnosis to get pregnant, which is wonderful. It helps people relax so much more, no matter how they're trying to get pregnant, whether they're using, a medical kind of format thing, extra help, whatever. But we have a breastfeeding program and lots of different hypnosis tracks for things like eliminating nausea and fear of needles and fear of childbirth and a bunch of other things. So it is my joy to read those birth stories that come into me every single day from people all over the world who are doing hypnobabies, and it helps them so much to have a much easier and more comfortable birthing. And of course, it helps their pregnancy as well. The second they start listening to these wonderful audio tracks and reading the information that we have for them, then they start to calm down, they start to relax, they start to enjoy their pregnancies. And that's a real gift that they give themselves.
What is hypnosis, so that people can understand that? Because, we've got some creepy, outdated beliefs about what hypnosis is.
Yes, absolutely. So most people think that hypnosis is what we see on the stage where, some people come up and they act like a chicken or Elvis or something. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of fun, but it's entertainment. So the skill of the hypnotist is picking people out of the audience who are going to play the game and be part of the entertainment. Real therapeutic hypnosis is completely different. And that is a very focused kind of concentration. Now, we've all been in hypnosis many, many times a day. So when we're waking up, when we're going to sleep, when we're reading, anytime you're reading for a while and you finally hear somebody calling your name from out here, or just try to get somebody who's very engaged in a game, like an electronic game, an online game, or even a handheld game. They're so into that game. They're in a state of hypnosis. So you can call them and call them and call them. And then finally their conscious, catches up with their subconscious. But also when we're driving, We can be driving for a while and we're so engrossed in thinking about what's going to happen when we get to wherever we're going that we've lost about 5 minutes. All of a sudden we realize we don't have a conscious memory of maybe the last 5 minutes of us driving. And anytime we're watching a screen of any kind, so like now, after a few minutes of watching the screen and focusing on that person or persons or message or even writing across the screen back and forth, you enter a state of hypnosis. And usually that results in an alpha state, which is a lighter state of hypnosis. But in real therapeutic hypnosis, where we can cure phobias and help stop smoking and help childbirth be much easier, you go into a deeper state of hypnosis. And let me just explain that there's the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. So the conscious mind is what we're thinking about with right now. You're listening to me, deciding, what I'm saying, does it make sense? And then the subconscious mind is basically a set of folders. And the folders they contain everything that you've ever seen, done, heard, experienced. They're all in that set of folders. And so what we want to do, if we want to use hypnosis, we want to get from here to here. Okay. But in between here is this thing called the critical faculty. And it's a filter. So it decides what gets from the subconscious to the conscious, what gets in there, how it's portrayed, how it's accepted. And so what we want to do in hypnosis is make the critical faculty go away and take a nap. And in order to do that, we relax the body, and then we relax the mind into a very focused state of concentration to a level where we can reach those folders. And we're not taking anything out, really. We're just basically updating our software. So we're going to update those folders. So it could be like in your laptop or wherever, whatever you use, there's a series of folders and there's data and you update it on a regular basis. Well, we're going to update it in the case of hypnobabies, hypnobirthing, to give it brand new perceptions of how normal and natural pregnancy and childbirth are, and how we can take those sensations of birthing, which are perfectly normal, pushing, pulling, stretching, tightening, baby movements, all of those things, and really attach a different feeling to them, a different sensation to them. This is very much like people who they have to have surgery of some sort. So it might be a dental surgery or a medical surgery, but they're allergic to medical anesthesia. Mm-hmm. So they work with a hypnotist ahead of time and they reprogram that part of the subconscious to believe that all of those sensations when they're having surgery, scalpels and stuff like that, are going to be comfortable sensations. And they can use this hypnoanesthesia, which is what it's called, throughout the entire surgery and afterwards, so that they don't have to have drugs that would either make them sick or make them highly allergic and, have bad reactions. And that's what we're doing in hypnobabies, is we're basically retraining that subconscious mind and giving it a software update.
That is so cool. And not to get off the subject, but there is actually a surgeon that uses some type of hypnoanesthesia for people who are allergic to anesthesia or have so many phobias about it. And it is incredibly successful.
Yes.
Oh, that is fantastic. So you did touch upon a bit about how it's like no one can make you be a chicken, because I know people think, or tell all of your darkest secrets or do stuff that's embarrassing, because that's what people associate hypnosis with. So,
well, excuse me, but I just want to point out that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis, which means that you can enter hypnosis, stay in hypnosis, accept those suggestions or not. You can reject them, and you can come out of hypnosis whenever you want. So no one ever makes you do anything. In fact, you're probably pretty hyper aware of everything that's going on around you when you're in hypnosis. even though you're in a focused state of concentration, you still can hear everything. You still know what's going on, and you still know what's being said. And so if it doesn't agree with you, if it doesn't resonate with you, then you can reject it, and you can emerge from hypnosis at any time you want to. So it's not a religious thing, and it's not a control thing. And it's just basically something that we do many times a day as it is. It's just we're doing it in a more directed way.
So those of us who are meditating at night or in the morning, and thinking of, about one thing, that's a form of self-hypnosis.
It is, actually. People ask me all the time, what's the difference between meditation and hypnosis? And it's basically the depth of the state that you get in and what is happening when you get there. So with meditation, which I do in the morning and at nighttime, there's a specific thing that we do. Some of us just concentrate on our breathing because we're all we want to think about is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to think about those daily things anymore. We don't even want to think about going to sleep in a little while. We just want to think about one thing and calming our body. Other people have a mantra, and other people, which is a word or a phrase that calms them or means something to them or gets them to a certain state or that they want to be in. And that's great. And you'll get into an alpha state. You may get into a deeper state, but with hypnosis, there is a much deeper state. In Hypnobabies, we call it somnambulism, which technically means sleepwalking, but there isn't any walking until you get into your birthing. It's just that somnambulism is the state of hypnosis that's very, very deep and gets you your brain waves into what we call theta. So alpha is a state where your brain waves are slowed down, but in theta they're very slow, very slow, and so that helps your inner mind to accept all of these suggestions, like a 5-year-old child that we say something to and they go, okay, and I'll just believe it. It's fine. And by the way, children are in a state of hypnosis all the time up till they're about age 6 and 7. And so what we want to do, just as an aside, parents, is to tell them what we want them to do all the time, because their inner mind is always listening, and it doesn't really respond to, none of our minds respond to negatives as much as it does positives. And so if you say, don't go in the street, you'll get killed, the inner mind kind of jumps over that don't thing. Instead, it's better to tell people what you want. Like tell a child, stay on the sidewalk. It's much, much safer. Be right here by mommy's side or with brother or whatever. And you don't say to somebody, don't forget your keys. You say, remember your keys, because that's what you want them to do. And that's what the mind responds to much more positively. So they're much more likely to remember their keys if you say, remember your keys, instead of don't forget your keys. Just a thing.
And I'm thinking about that. You're right, because what you hear are keys, I mean, it's like, like you do remember much more even when I leave, remember your keys, or remember this, or say hi to so-and-so, instead of the opposite. It's like you always seem to get those commands, but it's the don't forget. It's like commanding me to forget in my book.
Yeah, because the mind jumps over don't. So what it hears is forget your keys.
Right.
Forget your keys.
It's right.
If it's don't go in the street, the mind hears go in the street.
Right. Exactly. So as a hypnotherapist, how did you decide that this would work well with childbirth?
Okay. Well, we're going back many years to when I gave birth. Before that, I saw a friend of mine gave birth to her first child, and she did it without drugs. And I didn't know there was such a thing. At that point, I knew nothing. And I just thought everybody went in and had an epidural. And she's like, no, it hurt like holy warts, but I did it, and I was fascinated. I was so fascinated. I went and did a whole bunch of research, and she had taken a natural childbirth class called the Bradley Method. So I went to the Bradley Method and I said, I want to learn to teach this. I want to be a childbirth educator. They let me. So,
Oh.
so, so I studied and became a Bradley instructor and went to, quite a few of the births of my students before, when I was freshly married and before I got pregnant. And they were very painful because what it was breathing and relaxation. And I was like, well, this is what it is. This is what you get. This is how you do it. And many of them chose drugs. And that was cool because, I mean, I didn't have a problem with that. And I don't now. And I'll tell you why in a few minutes. But um, then I got pregnant myself. And I thought I knew everything that there was to know. But I did not. So when it came time for me to have my first baby, and I, after about maybe 7 or 8 hours of having contractions, I was like, why is this so painful? This can't be it. And, about another 6 or 7 hours, we went to the birth center, and I got there and I was 1 centimeter dilated and I was in so much pain. And they decided that my baby was turned around, that she was posterior position, which means the back of the head is coming down and scraping down the nerves in your spine, all the way down through, causing your entire lower half of your body to basically explode with each contraction in pain. And it was so painful. I was screaming. And I ended up, after 26 hours of that, being at the birth center. And I went in a wheelchair across the street, screaming my head off, to the hospital, where I was offered an epidural. And I was never so happy in the world to see anybody as I was that anesthesiologist. And he had this big long needle and stuck it in my back. And I was like, let's do it. And then I cried for 6 hours because I had not been able to have my natural birth, what I consider to be natural. And let me just say right now that all births are natural because there's nothing unnatural about a birth. But I wanted a vaginal birth. I wanted an unmedicated birth. I didn't want any bells and whistles. I didn't want to be hooked up to machines. I got all of that in the hospital. And the pain had been so great that I just couldn't believe there was any such a thing, that anybody could live through that. And afterwards, at the end of it, they pushed and pulled her out because I couldn't push because I had an epidural. So it was something else. I learned about vacuum extractors. I learned about, big long needles. I learned about postpartum. I learned about the 3 years afterwards where I had pains shooting up and down my back and into my neck and jaw from the epidural site. I also learned why anybody would choose to have drugs when I thought unmedicated was the way to go. Everybody should choose that. Now I have a very healthy respect as to why anybody would choose drugs of any kind in their birthing. And I'm like, whatever you want is cool. And a second birth 4 years later, it was only 7 hours long, but I was also screaming. He was also posterior. And I was traumatized. I had PTSD from my first birth, from the pain itself.
Okay.
Just the pain, which I thought, I've never been stabbed. But this to me felt like somebody was taking a knife, sticking it in, grinding it around about every 2 minutes, and then stopping and giving me 60 seconds of relief.
So at that point,
during the second birth, let me just tell you, during the second birth, it was the worst thing. I was having this horrible contraction. My husband was pressing on my back to try to keep the, I don't know what that did, but it did something. And I had my sister in front of me and she was holding my hands. And when the contraction was getting over with and I stopped screaming, I looked up into her tear-stained face and she said, it should never have to be this hard. And it's like a light bulb went on over my head that I went, that is absolutely true. And I know enough about childbirth now to really do something about that. And I knew if I never had another child, and I didn't, I was still going to find a way that other people could have unmedicated births, or at least feel much more comfortable until they chose medication. And I was going to do it. I didn't know what that was going to be. And it took me several years to find hypnosis when I saw a TV show about an obstetrician who basically offered hypnosis to his patients, and how amazing that was. And then I went and took a training in hypnobirthing from another company, and that wasn't what I was looking for. I needed a whole lot more hypno in my birthing. And so I went and studied hypnosis and hypnotherapy and pain relief for hypnosis and hypnoanesthesia and all these things, and created Hypnobabies. And that was 23 years ago now. And the rest is history. You know, I've added a lot to it since that time to help the birth partners as well, and to help our students have a way, if they have to change their birthing plan, that they can still use hypnosis for whatever it is the change happens to be. And for postpartum as well, to use hypnosis for postpartum. And so it means so much to me. Every single time I read one of those birth stories where somebody has had a much easier birthing, it heals me. You know what I mean?
Right. And your experience had to happen so that you could help others at this point, because you know what it's like not to have the hypnotherapy. So what are the benefits of using hypnotherapy for easier pregnancies and birth? And who do you find is more drawn to hypnotherapy? Because hypnosis is still kind of scary to people.
Yeah.
Who do you find is drawn to it?
Well, so we'll talk about that. Well, let's talk about the benefits. So in pregnancy itself, you can be much more calm, much more relaxed, and kind of counteract all the negativity, because as a pregnant person right now, there are a lot of opportunities for negativity to come at you, whether it's people stopping you in the supermarket and rubbing your tummy and telling you how horrible their birth was, or your mother or your aunts or your friends or whatever, or online stuff, you know, that you're reading or seeing, and everyone's telling you how horrible this all is. So with Hypnobabies, we have affirmations that help you from the outside in, and we have hypnosis that helps you from the inside out to feel much more calm and relaxed about, you know, the pregnancy and the upcoming birthing. And then during the birthing, you're much more calm, you're much more relaxed, you're much more comfortable. Your birth partner has his own hypnotic cue to use, or hers, so that they can stay much more calm and relaxed and help you more, if you like. And if you do not have a birth partner, then you can do Hypnobabies all by yourself, but then postpartum as well. So there are a lot of benefits to this. Everybody in the room stays calmer too, because there's basically the other kinds of births that there are the person who comes in and they want their epidural at 1 or 2 centimeters, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that is what the hospitals and the staff are mostly used to. And then there's people who are doing what is considered natural childbirth, which is basically just unmedicated. And they're doing a lot of the walking the halls and the vocalizing, shall we say, which makes the staff very unhappy, because they don't want that person to be in pain. And so Hypnobabies offers hypnobirthing, which allows them to have an easier, more comfortable time of it, but without drugs that, when they get into the system, can alter the mother's birthing itself, the contractions themselves. It can either slow them down or cause the mother to have what's called an epidural fever, or affect the baby's heart rate and different things like that. So if somebody wants an unmedicated birth, or they want to stay more comfortable until they do choose medication, this is a much better way to go. And as far as who would choose Hypnobabies, 95% of our students are hospital birthers. And they are just people who, as I said, they want an easier birth, but without the side effects of the drugs for themselves and their babies. And so they choose hypnobabies. And they can be that first time parent, that first time mom who wants to avoid all the awful stories that people are telling her about. She doesn't want that. So she learns hypnobabies, which is not, by the way, all about hypnosis for childbirth. It is a complete childbirth education program. And so we teach everything, nutrition and exercise and staying healthy and low risk and all the stages of birthing and postpartum and how to take care of mom and baby and comfort positions and everything that you can learn, as well as how to advocate for yourself so that your birthing doesn't end up turning into something else because of medical mismanagement. And so
that's fantastic.
And there's another type of person who takes hypnobabies that I have a special heart for. And those are the people who have had awful births before and really need a healing birth. And so they come to hypnobabies and they find that they can use these techniques to be much more calm about this upcoming birth and not dread it so much, because they're going to white knuckle through it. They're not going to do that anymore. They're going to relax and they end up having a healing birth. And then when they have a healing birth, then I have a healing birth. It's the same for me because I know that they didn't have to have that, that the dread of all of that and then go through another difficult childbirthing experience.
So when they have these births and what percentage of women you have a partner that actually participates in it with them?
I would say about 75% of our students have a birth partner. And if they're taking an actual Hypnobabies class, because we have actual group classes that are taught in different places throughout the United States and Canada, and a few in Australia and a few in Germany right now. And so they'll come to the class instead of going to Lamaze or instead of going to any other wonderful childbirth class. They come to this complete childbirth class, and the birth partner comes too. And the birth partner participates in the hypnosis and starts to understand what the benefits of it is for himself as well as his pregnant partner, because now she's much more calm and relaxed about everything and not worrying so much and not, nervous all the time about what's going to happen. And then that makes him even more calm. So we have that. And then we have, self-study courses as well that people are using all over the world who can't come to a regular Hypnobabies class. But the birth partner is given a lot to do, if there is a birth partner, to read all of this, to make sure that, they're learning all the cues and techniques, because there are some physical cues that they use to help the birthing parent in their birthing time, which is what we call labor, to feel more calm and confident, and they work together.
So how does fear and expectation affect the experience of the childbirth process?
Well, first of all, to stay in a state of fear is to stay in a state of stress throughout pregnancy. And that can cause a lot of hormonal imbalances and release of stress hormones, cortisol, and even adrenaline. And some things are good and some things are bad at different times for different reasons. But in pregnancy, we want it to be the least amount possible so that there's no constriction of the muscles. There's no constriction. The body doesn't stay in a state of tension, so that when the time comes for the birthing to start, everything can flow instead of being held back by fear. So during the pregnancy, we want to eliminate fear, and we do that. We actually have a fear elimination track in Hypnobabies where the mom is allowed to just let go of fears, concerns, and control issues and let them just flow away. And in the birthing itself, we don't want fear to rear its ugly head, because it can cause what's called the fear, tension, pain syndrome. So if we have fear, then it causes us to have tension, which causes us to have pain, and it takes us up the other side, and then we have more, and it's just a big cycle of yuck.
Yeah.
So the fear itself can cause the tension, which causes the muscles around the uterus and the uterus itself to tighten up and clamp down and keep baby in, which is not what we're doing when we're having a baby. Baby needs to come down and out. So we have a way for them to eliminate their fear during childbirth as well. And of course, they've been taught throughout the entire course of Hypnobabies and in the reading materials, which are super important, as well as the tracks that they listen to. Everything is conscious and subconsciously teaching them that this is going to be a beautiful process, that everything's going to work perfectly together. The body's going to know what to do. And most of the time it does. If we leave it alone, we don't mess with it. And that's another story. If you want me to get into that, I certainly can.
Because we definitely like to mess with things. So the body couldn't possibly know what it was doing without our help. So I'd like to get into that a little bit, but tell us a little bit about the babies when they're born. We were talking earlier how they're calmer. So tell us, share that information, because I know that that's an important thing, and it probably will stay with them the rest of their life too.
Well, what's really interesting is that when the moms are pregnant, the babies respond to what they're doing. So if they're really calm and relaxed, the babies become calm and relaxed. There isn't a lot of tension in the body causing them to be bathed in stress hormones. And so then when they come out and they don't have drugs in their system, so they can breathe well, they can nurse right away, and they haven't had anything that has kept the process from being difficult, like having to have an instrumental birth, which could be a vacuum extraction where they're pulled out, or using forceps where they're pulled out, neither of which is all that common anymore. But they also haven't gotten stuck in there. Sometimes if people choose medication, the baby will just kind of get stuck because the birthing stops and everything becomes lax. Instead of being like a slide for the baby, the muscles around the baby and the ligaments and the pelvic floor all become lax, and the baby kind of gets stuck in there. And so they don't have any of that. So they come out and they're really calm. The mothers report to us that the babies are really calm and that they respond to the same music. We use the same music. It's background music that actually sounds not like a wave, but in the rhythm of a wave. And so if they play that music afterwards, the baby has actually heard the music before from the mother listening to all of our tracks, and they become even more calm. So there's another thing to be considered. And of course, the way that the baby is born is super important, so that process is much more gentle for them. And we all want it to be. We all want it to be a gentle, non-pushing, pulling out baby kind of thing. But it's also important to remember that in many cases, if there's been a challenging birthing, the way the baby was born is directly associated by the mom with the baby. So if the process by which the baby was born is really positive and beautiful, and she can look back on it, and unlike I did, I looked back on it and couldn't believe I made it out alive. If she can look back on it and think, that was just amazing. I'm not saying that every single mom is going to go into this having done Hypnobabies and have this pain-free birth, and some do. But if it can be so much easier, so much easier. And people describe it a lot as intense menstrual cramps, or I had some intensity when the baby was coming out, you know. It can be, if it can be more like that than the screaming that I went through, then that that is worth all of the listening every single day to your audio tracks and reading your materials that you do for 2 months before the baby is born. And to me, to have that association and look back on that birth as a beautiful, joyful thing is worth its weight in gold.
So, does using Hypnobabies for children distance the parents from the experience or the baby at all? It's like, because some people could say, oh, but you don't experience that, so you're not really connected or you're distant from the baby. I think it would be like just wonderful. You probably would want to have more.
Well, such a great question. That doesn't happen. You are generally hyper aware of everything that's going on around you when you're in your birthing time, if you would like to be, but you can also block it out, things from the outside.
Okay.
Okay. So you could literally block out the people talking on the other side of the room or the beeping of the machines in the room. But what's going on inside? 100%. 100% in touch with the body, the mind, the baby. It's all one. And you are completely in tune with where the baby's at and oftentimes what the baby needs. And moms will get into positions that literally turn the baby because the mom is turned, because they're so in tune with what that baby needs right then. Now, this is if somebody has not told them that they have to stay flat on their back or in a bed, because that doesn't really work. We want to be able to be as mobile as possible during childbirth for the descent and the positioning of the baby, whatever that might be. And this is one of the things that I wrote into Hypnobabies, was what's called eyes open childbirth hypnosis. And that means that in between each contraction, the mom can get up, move, change positions, talk, eat, drink, go to the bathroom, whatever, and still stay deeply in hypnosis and just as comfortable without losing her focus. And so we teach them exactly how to do all of this and what are the best ways to get up right away after a birthing wave ends, which is what we call contractions, and go to that bathroom, do your thing, and get ready for the next one, and getting ready for the next one, it just gets you in that zone. And you're all ready for the hypnoanesthesia to wash over you in the entire middle part of your body. You can focus it to the different places that you need it. What if it's in your back? What if it's in your cervix? What if it's in your lower abdomens or down your thighs? You can mentally focus that hypnoanesthesia to those areas during each birthing wave.
Wow. So are there specific words that work better for pregnancy and birth than other programs or even other words?
Well, we use specific words because of association, and that is emotional association. And that is the denotation and connotations are different of a word. So say you have the word labor. Labor means work to most people. And in birthing, it means labor.
Right.
You're going to go into labor. So the association, the emotional association, which is the connotation of the word, needs to be different. So we don't use the word labor. We use the word birthing or birthing wave or pressure wave even. And we use those over and over again times hundreds in the materials, in the audio tracks, so that it becomes a wave. It becomes a wave. It's not labor. And the same thing with, instead of, saying due date, we say guess date, because automatically that allows you to have leeway about when to expect that baby to start its own birthing. And they do. They throw out the chemicals that start birthing. And that can help people trust much more their own self and their own babies about letting birthing start on its own instead of being induced for somebody else's convenience, which changes the entire dynamics of the birthing itself. We use other words like transformation instead of transition, because even though transition is a wonderful word for easing from one thing into another, like easing from first stage birthing into second. Whenever we use the word transition to describe labor, someone's labor, it's always sounds like this. Well, when I got to transition, I lost it. Or I was fine, but then when transition hit, it was so painful. It was so horrible. And there isn't anything positive before and after the word transition in most people's birth stories. So for us, it's transformation, transforming from the whole dilation phase into the pushing phase. So when we use words that can be associated with a more positive thing, and we do it for months and months at a time, from the inside out and the outside in, then in the birthing time, it's associated much, much better with something positive, and things go much more smoothly.
As you just said, the word transforming, even I relaxed, and I'm not even pregnant, as opposed to transitioning. Transitioning does say, oh, it's a good thing, but it's going to be some work wrong along the way, but transforming does feel better, more positive and uplifting, actually.
Right.
So now, do the women work with doulas and other aspects, or do they? So what does the gamut of childbirth run? I know hospitals, but are you still having some people using it, delivering at home, or?
Yeah, about 5% of our students give birth at home or at a birth center, not a hospital birth center, but a real birth center that's detached from a hospital, freestanding. And yeah, I mean, everybody can benefit from this. And can you say that over again? Because I don't want to say the wrong thing.
So let's change the question. So how do doctors in a hospital setting accept this? How do they not accept? How do they react?
Okay, because I don't want to get into anything negative. I want to make sure that we're focusing on positive things here. So doctors are generally fascinated. The nurses, the doctors are generally fascinated because they've seen other types of hypnobirth or whatever that they think doesn't work. It all works to a certain degree, but they're really fascinated when they see how amazingly peaceful our students generally are, no matter what happens, even when they mess with things. Okay, I'm off that. So the nurses will be really fascinating, and they will bring other nurses in to see the mom and say, look at her. She's 9 centimeters and she has no drugs in her system. And they want to bring people in to look at her. Now, midwives are generally very happy when they hear somebody's doing hypnobabies. And they do work with moms in home births and some hospitals and birth centers who are in a lot of pain generally because they're choosing a way they're not choosing an epidural. They're not choosing to have a hospital birth and in a way that they could choose drugs at any point. And so they're happy that our students can have a way to make this much, much easier. I would like to see many more midwives give hypnobabies a chance, because hypnobabies is not regular hypnobirthing, and I'm not putting anybody down, but what I'm doing is responding to comments that I've heard from midwives about hypnobirthing. And hypnobabies using somnambulistic hypnoanesthesia and getting our students into a theta state and using binaural beats in the music, which helps them to go even deeper and stay in hypnosis much longer and easier, is a different thing. And so I would love, because I've heard from some of our students that they go to a midwife and the midwife says, well, you can try it, but I've never seen that hypno thing work. Well, how about if we say, you know what? I'm fascinated to see how this goes. So you go, girl. Let me know what I can do to, help you
Right. To help you. Right.
during your pregnancy and your birthing.
Right.
Doulas, let's get back to the doula thing,
Mm-hmm.
because doulas are wonderful. And I wish that more people would use doulas, because they are this beautiful, gentle presence in most ways.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I wanted to say before, and I just couldn't get it out. So thank you for being patient with me. They're usually this beautiful, gentle presence that can not only help the birthing person, but the birth partner. The birth partner to take breaks, the birth partner to, maybe if they're a little unsure about certain techniques that we're doing, comfort techniques or whatever. And in Hypnobabies' case, we do traditionally train doulas to become what we call hypnodoulas. And all that means is that you take your traditional skills and you learn how to alter them a little bit, learn the words and the philosophies of Hypnobabies and use those, so that we're not using anything that would, kind of fly in the face of what a Hypnobabies birthing student would be using. That's a nice way to put it. I did good.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
it's also interesting. So anyone listening to this broadcast, how will they find you and start to use the process, or at least find out more information about Hypnobabies?
Well, we have a website at hypnobabies.com, and that's HYPNOBABIES, not HIP. HYP, like hypnosis. And then we have a store at hypnobabies-store.com, where all of our courses are, all of our trainings, our wonderful breastfeeding course by Nancy Moorbacher, all of our other tracks. We have tracks for eliminating stress and anxiety, for, as I said, fear of needles and fear of childbirth, and breastfeeding success, and after your baby comes. And we have parenting affirmations. We have even a toddler sleepy time track, and that helps the toddlers to be able to relax and go to sleep much easier, and sleep longer and feel more confident. A lot of people have trouble with their toddlers getting off to sleep and feeling comfortable about sleeping. And so this is our most popular track with parents. So we're also on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and Pinterest and YouTube. So come and see us.
So at any point, so if it doesn't matter if it's my first pregnancy, my second pregnancy, or third pregnancy, I can switch to using Hypnobabies if I want to.
Of course. Of course. What people have learned before, because Hypnobabies is so different, it's best if they just focus on, engaging in everything Hypnobabies, because we have a lot. We have a lot of different language. We have different philosophies. We have hundreds of pages of reading material and techniques and cues and comfort things, techniques, and all this things to read and learn. And so it's best not to try to take two things at once. But if you've had a baby before with another method or way, or absolutely nothing, then of course Hypnobabies can benefit you this time around. And we hope that it will. We hope that everyone will choose, even if it's not Hypnobabies, to get as much education as you can about childbirth itself, the natural process of birth, and to trust in that. Because most of the time, when left alone and not meddled with, the body knows exactly what to do. The mind knows exactly what to do. And it doesn't need to be messed with or modified or managed.
That is so true. So what are other uses for hypnosis in pregnancy and postpartum?
Oh my goodness. Well, many of our moms have used the techniques that they learn in Hypnobabies, the hypnoanesthesia, for aches and pains. in their back and their hips, and even dental work. Um, you
Dental
know,
work too. That's cool.
yeah. There are people who maybe have a breech baby
Mhm.
and they want to go have what's called an ECV, which is an external cephalic version. So they take the baby, if the baby's head is in the wrong position, the bottom's down and the head is up, and the doctor will do a procedure where he kind of shifts the baby around from the outside, um, and allows the head now to be down here. Sorry.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's kind of uncomfortable. So there are moms who use it for that. There are moms who use their hypnoanesthesia for internal exams, and we all know how comfortable those are.
Oh yeah, don't we?
So we teach our moms how to use their hypnoanesthesia for all of these different kinds of procedures, for getting an IV if they need to have an IV put in their hand
Mhm.
or their arm, and even if they choose to have an epidural, they can use hypnoanesthesia to ease those processes.
Oh, that's fantastic. So they have a lot of options with
Yes,
hypno babies. They don't have to just stick with one. That's
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 right. Of course.
yeah.
And we honor anything that anybody wants to do. Childbirth is very personal. And you can ask an 85-year-old woman who's had 10 kids how her children were born, and she can tell you exactly the details of each one of their births in detail very well, because it is huge in our lives. Huge. And so, we want to always want it to be the most positive thing possible for people, and to remember it that way, and that they have the power to help make it that way themselves. They're not stuck in between their doctor and their hospital and the book they read. Whatever you end up choosing, we honor that.
That's fantastic that women now know that they have choices. And you can use the hypnosis at any point through any process you choose. So you don't have to feel, sometimes women feel guilty about not just having the full natural birth. This still allows you to be in control of that birth and the kind of birth that you want to have too. So that's really, really cool. Um, so in the hypnosis in the childbirth process, have there been any hiccups that people decide it's not working and then they do something else?
Of course. um, the first and most obvious thing is that there are people who do not learn and practice and use hypnobabies as directed in our written materials. You can't just listen to a few tracks. I like this one, I don't like that one. It is an actual course, and it is a scheduled course of tracks that work together. Each one builds upon the hypnosis track before it. And in the end, you have all of the techniques in here. So if we don't learn, practice, and use hypnobabies and read all of the materials which tell you how and what and why you're doing everything, and it's not going to work as well. That said, there are people who do all of that, and yet there are many dynamics in childbirth that could change the face of the childbirth like that, and make it so that we're on a different path. Now we're on a different plan. It could be something wrong with the baby. It could be something wrong with the mother. It could be a person in the room it could be the doctor, the nurse. It could be your mother who came to help you. Um, it could be anybody who's not as positive an influence as possible, who pops you right out of hypnosis with a comment and or a request to get up and do something that you were not planning to do. There's all kinds of dynamics and things that happen that could change the course of a birthing, and therefore change the way the hypnosis works for that particular person.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing this information. This has been absolutely fantastic. And for those who are listening, be sure you pass it on to any mothers, nieces, nephews, or anyone that you know is considering childbirth. And is it too late to start the process? in the pregnancy, or they can play catch up if they need to?
Well, we do suggest that people start at about 28 to 30 weeks pregnant.
Okay.
And then they go through the 6-week course. And then there's what we call maintenance, which is basically listening to a few tracks a day. So all of your written materials, you have all that done. You've read everything. You've figured it all out. And now you're listening to these maintenance tracks, which keep those cues and techniques deep within the subconscious mind. So getting them from here to here and keeping it there by, listening all the way until the baby comes. And then, of course, there are tracks to listen to if you would like in your birthing time as well, to keep you in hypnosis and more comfortable. Or you can just do all the cues and techniques in your head, like activating your software yourself.
Okay. That's fantastic. So remind the audience of how they can reach you and become acquainted, and even decide to take some of the hypnotherapy classes, the hypnobabies classes, not hypnotherapy, hypnobabies. So that they can reach you and find out how to get started. I think this is a fantastic program, and it's definitely an option that women need to consider, considering all of the things that we read in the media about what's happening in childbirth.
Well, hypnobabies.com has a lot of basic information about hypnobabies. If you want to learn more specifically about the courses that we have, the hypnobirthing courses, then you can go to hypnobabies-store.com, and you can email us at info@hypnobabies.com. We have a phone number, which is 714-894-BABY, which is 2229, 714-894-2229. And if you would like me to create a special discount code for your viewers, I can do that. And that way everybody can get the benefit of doing it and knowing that you're doing it for less with Stephanie.
Oh, that would be great if you could do that for us. And in that way, you guys can do it for less with Stephanie, because they know that I do believe in just the general power of hypnotherapy. And then to just take it and attach it to something so important, so meaningful, but yet so painful and misunderstood, I think is just absolutely fantastic. So I need to thank you for all that you do, because it does help women in the birthing process and help you actually have a pleasant experience in it. And at least, if nothing else, you feel in control every step of the way.
And that is super important.
Yes.
Being in control, and that can change a birthing right there, is
Right.
feeling like you have no control over what's going on. But in Hypnobabies, you learn how to be in control, how to make your own choices, how to advocate for yourself, as well as learn all of these great comfort techniques.
Yes, that's fantastic. So I want to thank you. We are at the end of our time. So for those of you who are listening, I want to thank you for it. Share this information very widely, please, because we all know someone who can actually benefit from the Hypnobaby process. And we know someone probably is there now wishing that they had it when they were delivering. I know several women who are saying, me too. I was quick, but still, it's like it would have been nice to have known all of this stuff. I had quick, from total of 3 hours. It was easy delivery, but it would have been nice because you could start, as you're learning the process, the baby is even being effective and calmed by it. And so my child was born early, and maybe he could have stayed inside a little longer like he should have. But this is just fantastic. So thank you very much for joining me. As we say goodnight, I want to encourage my audience to be inspired. Until further notice, I want you to celebrate everything and make this day just what you need in order for you to have a good day, because it's out there for you right now. As a matter of fact, it's chasing you harder than you're chasing it. Do not go gently into that good night. I want you to find a hero worth dying for and take it and be the person that you're waiting for, and make today so awesome that yesterday gets jealous, and above all else, do it your way. I'm Stephanie Wilson-Coleman, the Empowerment Doctor, and it has been a great time with Kerry. I appreciate you again for all that you do, and please don't stop, because we need as many breakthroughs as you can come up with. So good night to all. Bye now.
Life's too short to drink cheap champagne, so I decided to buy me